to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years and let her.
Hello everybody, welcome back. So I am going to be putting back together the So Handy today, and I did not show you when I was painting her because I honestly went through a couple different practices of different things. I was trying to do something and it just wasn't working, so my original paint idea is not what you're going to see, but it still came out adorable. So basically it is an aqua pearl, okay, and this is the front. As you can see, I did get her little medallion back on, and we have the Eloise. And I wanted to point out, on these So Handies, there's a little hole right in the front. And if you look at the traditional, out of the factory So Handies, they have a little just hole there. And sometimes it's in the middle of a decal. The decal placement seems to be a little, arbitrary. But a lot of times that hole is just cut right through the decal. So I'm going to see what I can do to kind of camouflage that. But I just wanted to let you know what I ended up doing is after she was stripped, I, gave her a light sand, gave her a self-etching primer, gave her 2 coats of a light aqua enamel, and then a coat of a misty pearl enamel, and then a clear coat on top of that. So she should be very well protected. I think she's going to be adorable. So I'm going to go ahead and tip the camera down, and we're going to get started putting her back together. I want to show one other little thing. I have been playing with the little brads to put the decals back on, because sometimes when you pull them off, the little nails get totally destroyed. So what my husband and I have come up with is, this is what I'm pretty much using. It is a solid brass escutcheon pen, and then we got a steel metal punch that has a little flower design on it, and just punched that onto our little solid brass. So it does not look exactly like the little flower on the traditional pins, but I think it's about as close as I'm gonna get, and they do look pretty. So that is what I'm using in case anyone is curious. And it's a whole lot easier for me to get these, and make them up that way than to order 2 little pins that's going to end up costing you quite a bit to get 2 little actual pins shipped over. So, okay, let me go ahead and get my parts out. Okay, so welcome to the next day. I had to take care of some things. There's my light on. So I have just put my little lifter lever in the bottom hole here. There's a spring that's going to go over that. And there's a hole in the shaft there. I need to get that hole up into this area, this little bracket. Okay, I need to line up this bracket with that hole. Okay, if you can see, it's fairly lined up there. And then this is my lifter lever that's going to go over that. And then there's a screw that holds it all together. So let me see how I can do all of this at once. The tricky part about this is that I need to be putting this spring under pressure and moving it up while I am trying to screw the lifter lever on. So, how in the world is the best way to do this? Hang on. Okay, I think I figured something out. If I stick a little wooden Q-tip in that slot, it's pushing up that spring. So then I can place, hopefully. No, it's still not high enough. Okay, I need to put, let's try 2 toothpicks. Q-tips. See if that is enough here. And if I have 2 in there, yeah, that's high enough. Great. Okay, so now I can go ahead and put this little screw through the hole, get it all lined up, and get this tightened up here. Okay, so I've got that on, pushing up my presser foot so that this can be free. Can this go up and down? Yes, it can. All right, now that that's on there, I'm going to go ahead and cinch up this screw here because it was not quite in alignment before. I just needed to get it started. All right, now that little lifter lever is moving freely. So this is down and that is up, down and up. Okay, so far so good. This has a little bit of movement, but that's all we can do about that right now. All right, so now that that is on, I'm going to be putting my shaft back in. This is what it looks like now. And this bottom hole is where it slides into. I'm just going to let this hang out up here for the meantime. Flip it over, and I'm looking at this part right here, this flat opening. Okay, so this little bearing here, as you can tell, it's off-centered, okay? And one side is fatter, that has a little screw hole in it, the other side is not. I am placing it, here, let me pull it off so you can see. Here's this shaft, which rotates, all right? I'm gonna put that so that this slot is horizontal. This bearing has a side that looks like it has a little, you know, secondary area, kind of washer looking, but it's part of the same bearing. This side has a hole in it for a screw. I'm going to place it so that that fatter side with the screw hole is going straight down so that that screw hole is aiming straight up at the side of the slot like this, okay? And then I'm going to be putting my little hook on, and I'm going to be putting my hook this way so that it's coming around like that. I believe this is the proper orientation, but if I do need to change it, I can do that later. I'm going to need to put this little screw in here to cinch it all together. So I'm just going to turn it a little bit from the bottom there so I can reach this hole from the outside and get that screwed in. Oh, wait, before I do that, I almost screwed something up. Okay, let me pull this back out. I need to put my feed dogs on. Okay, so these feed dogs slide over that bearing and they line up with the feed dog presser foot up here, okay? So then I'm gonna put this back on. This way. Yes, and here's my hole over on this side. And let me get that screwed in. Alrighty, I am gonna go ahead and get this spring put back on. This little hook part. It's gonna hook into this bracket. There's a little hole in it. And then the end of the spring goes in this tiny hole right here, okay? So it's hooked on like that. Then let me go polish this little flathead screw, and that's going to go in this hole right here. All right, I need to put a little bit of oil in here, just a drop, so that I can get easy movement in that area, because when the shaft gets turned, it's going to be going back and forth right here. Okay, and I think we're okay at this point. I'll be oiling everything else, but I didn't know if I'd be able to get to that little space right in there later, so I wanted to do that now. All right, so I'm just turning it, making sure everything is good and that it is laying nice and flat here, and it is. So the last thing I'm going to do is put my stitch length on, and I believe this little spring goes in the back of it. I watched back in my video and I didn't see it. It must have been stuck with goo into something while I was videoing, taking it apart, but it makes the most sense to me to put it behind this little stitch length screw. So I need to just keep wiggling this until I know that it is centered on there. I should be able to move it freely once this screw is tightened all the way. Okay, so with that done, I need to get my needle bar put back in, and you can tell what side is the top, at least on my model here, because it has a very faint number 6 on it, but this hole here is what thread goes through. Down here where there's a hole in it, that's what the needle goes through, so that goes on the bottom. Okay, so I need to wiggle it into this hole. Okay, I think I've got it. This little hole right here, that is where that little nub goes. And I'm just trying to figure out why this is so stiff. I know that this little needle bar does not move up and down a whole lot, so I'm throwing more and more oil on there. I masked it really well, so there shouldn't be any paint in that little slot, but you know, sometimes these older machines, they have little grooves or something worked in, but I think that's going to work. Okay, wipe that excess oil off up here, because we don't want these to be too oily. All right, so do you remember this little nub thing here? If I make sure that the number 6 here is visible like that, then I can know that my little nub is going to need to go towards the back here. Okay, so I'm going to turn it. I'm going to turn this whole little shaft out a little bit so I can slip it in place. And I just need to kind of push it in there. It just popped in with my finger, so that's good. All right, and now I can turn this back to its right position here. There you go. I still wish that moved a little bit freer. I might work with it off camera a little bit just to try to smooth that action out a bit. Okay, for the next part, I need to connect this little bracket. Now, the front of the machine is face down, where you can see the number 2, that is also face down, and this little divot is where that little nub on the needle bar is going to align to. So I'm just turning my needle bar over enough that it aligns to it, and then straightening it back out. And you know what, I think I need to put it through this side over here first. So let me do that. Oh my goodness, this is like one of those puzzles. Okay, sticking it under the needle bar, hooking it over here. All right, so I have my little needle bar turned so the nub is sticking out, so I can move this up and down back there. So it's in place, it's all the way down, and now I'm going to slide this little connector over it, maybe like that. Okay, so I put the connector on first, and then I can like stick it in and loop it under place. Then I'm going to turn this little needle bar here so it's going to line up in that little depression in this slot. Okay, so now the nub is facing the front. And with all of that done, now I can go ahead and get this screw put into place here and get it tightened up so that that bar can rock back and forth. And I need to switch out my bits. I'm just going to use this little one just to get it started here. Switch out to a bigger one. And I need to make sure that this bar is centered over this screw so that it can still rock. If it's bound up, then it's not going to work well. Back it out just one hair. Okay. All right, so it is turning. This is it up here. If you can see as I turn the wheel, actually I think the wheel turns away right. Still feels stiff to me. It's feeling stiff, so I'm probably going to have to work a little bit, but we'll get it assembled for the most part here. I wanted to show you the screw, this big screw here. It is the one that is backing into this hole in the very front. And I was hoping that it would brighten it up a little bit, but right now it's looking like it's going to stay black. So if I take this off and I put a small dab of like a light colored paint up against that, I'm not too sure if the decal will be strong enough to withstand whatever chemical that paint will do, so I'm just going to have to leave it. I'm trying to figure out a way. I mean, that's just the way they are. If you look at them online and everything, they have that little circle there that is always right in the middle of the decal work. So I have just slid this wheel. See the little teeth on the wheel? That's what meshes with that. It just slides into this hole here. Okay, and that is turning it. Does it turn towards or away? I think it turns away. All right, there is a handle that goes on there. I just wanted to see how everything was working. Okay, I painted the handle chrome, so that's how it's going to get turned, like that. So far, so good. I'm going to put a little more oil in here. It's not really squeaking anywhere, but I just want to make sure before I put any more things on top of it that where this is up against the metal, going up and down, that it is lubricated. Where the inside of these shafts are, it's lubricated. All of those little points in here where this shaft is, get all of that touched with just a drop of oil in each spot before I close this up. I am going to go ahead and put this screw back in over here. It's about a 1/2 inch long screw that just fits in. And that seems to like lock this in place almost. Okay, there we go. It had to wiggle into its position, I think. I'm just turning it until it's tight enough and nothing is binding. All right. Ooh, I hear a squeak. I need to find out what is squeaking. Alrighty, so I just kept oiling and turning and oiling and turning, and I think I've got the squeak out. I think I do. I think the spot that I missed before was right in here. That little bearing that goes through the wheel. So I think we are good. She is cranking right along. That needle bar is flying up and down, so we are good. I need to run into the house and pull something out of the oven really quick because my alarm just went off. So let me go and do that, grab a cup of coffee, and I will be back in a moment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the back plate on. I think everything else is working really well so far. So I have a shorter screw that goes here, a longer one up there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this shorter one set here and screwed in. Let me go ahead and switch out bits so that I don't scratch my paint here. Okay, now that is kind of going into this area where the shaft is, so I want to make sure that everything still works after that screw, and it does. So now I'm going to go ahead and polish the head of my longer one and put it in here. Okay, with those in, turning it again, making sure everything is still working well. It's a cute little noise. Little clickety click. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and put the little top tension mechanism and everything on. So this is the tension there. If you remember, there was a disc, another disc, the curved sides facing each other, a little spring that slips through that slot there, and the little nut that goes on top. There. Alrighty, so that's the little tension mechanism, okay? Now I also have this spring here. Nope, more like this. Let me go ahead and get this put into place. There is a little screw that goes here. This is going to slide over my thread post like this. I'm aligning these two pieces, the little slidey piece in the bottom with the hole in the casting of my blue part now. And there's another little nut that's going to go through there. So let me go ahead and get this cinched up. Alrighty, and once again, turning everything, and it's still looking and sounding right, so that's good. Polishing it as I go. So when it gets threaded, it goes through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, okay? So all parts are present and accounted for. Now there's a big plate that's going to go down here. So let me go ahead and do the final polish on the plate, and we'll get that screwed on. There were some parts of this machine that had rust on it, and it was enough rust that it caused some pitting, okay? Like here, it's pitted. There's really not much I can do about that. But I'm going to polish it the best I can. But if you see it, that's okay. It just proves that it had some living beforehand. Okay, I've got it about as clean as I think I'm going to right now, so I'm just going to slide it in place. There's a couple little mounting holes here I need to line up, and I want to make sure that my feed dogs are in the slot before I screw anything down. So we've got these two little screws that are going to go into these holes and keep that secure. I am ready to try it out, but I need to get my needle in. Very finicky little space. The flat part of the needle is what is up against the screw on the inside there. Okay, look, when the needle comes down, my hook is in the opposite position that it needs to be. This needs to be flipped over. So the hook is up here at this point. So I need to unscrew or loosen up this screw, pull out that hook, and flip it upside down. All right, let me see if I can show you. When the hook is at rest, you know, I flipped it right side out, and it's way set in all the way. It is much too far away from that needle, okay? The hook itself needs to be very close to right behind that needle so that it's close enough to grab that little loop of thread. So I am eyeballing it to see where that looks like it needs to be. Okay, I am just going to use a bobbin up here to try to run some thread through. This piece number 3, it needs to be able to have a little bit of movement every time you turn it around. So you see it going up and down. If you've like really screwed that in really hard so it's not moving, you might want to back it out a little bit, because that's what's going to release the tension when your machine is making its stitches, okay? So let me go ahead, get this threaded through. Now I don't have the instructions for this handy, so I'm hoping I'm doing this correct. So, you know, if you know better, let me know. So after number 2, I'm going through number 3, okay? And then 4 is the tension. So I'm pulling it over my tension wheel because 5 is over here. I'm going to push it through number 5. Okay, so that's going through the tension there, and then through number 6 hole. Okay, yep, so far so good here. And then the needle gets threaded from the front to the center, like so. This is a short needle. It is a 24 by 1 needle. goodness. There it goes. Okay. And I'm going to pull that underneath the presser foot. Okay. Let me lift the presser foot up. Give a nice tug. I have no idea if this tension is set right or not. We're just going to take it one step at a time. Okay, I have been messing with her for quite some time, and at this point I have her sewing. I can tell you there are a lot of little things that you need to make sure are lined up exactly on these machines in order to get them to sew. And it is a chain stitch machine, so when you get to the end, if you don't lock in your stitch, if you give it a tug, it'll all come out, okay? But here is the back. It's a nice little chain stitch there. Here's the front. I think that's really, really nice. I'm going to play with it a little while longer, but let me show you. Down here on the bottom, this screw that's holding on the cam, that screw, if you look at it, it needs to be directly opposite from the hook, okay? So make sure when you're putting all of this back on, the hook is 180 degrees away from this screw here. And also when you're lining it up, you need to, let's see if I can do this where you can see, maybe this direction you can see better. You need to make sure that the distance between the inside of the needle and that hook is very close. Close but not touching, okay? Because that little hook needs to come right to the inside of that needle to be able to grab the thread and make a chain underneath, okay? Also, I had to loosen this nut and actually pull the whole little hook mechanism out like a fraction of an inch, maybe like a 32nd of an inch out, just to make that spacing there. But you want to make sure when you do that that this bearing doesn't come out with it. So the bearing has to stay in place so it's up against the casting, but the hook comes out. So kind of finicky adjustments there. And yeah, now this machine should have a piece of felt on the bottom. I'm going to talk to the owner and see if she wants me to glue that on, or if she wants to. And as I was playing with this, my chrome spray paint came off. I was turning this crank so much. So I'm actually going to pull this screw off, sand this carefully, and I'm just going to put, I'm probably just going to take it down to bare wood and put a little bit of shellac on that. I think that will be better than paint, and it's easy for me to remove that paint. But I wanted to show you, if you can see down here, how this is the stitch length here, okay? So it's coming all the way towards it and then away, and then towards it and away. So this distance here is what we're looking at. And so if I want a shorter stitch and I bring this up, it has a shorter distance to be able to travel, okay? And if I pull this down, this little bar here has a longer distance that it can travel, okay? So I hope that helps. I think that she's really cute. I kind of got her full of fingerprints as I was trying to get her all ready to sew. I'm going to go ahead and fix this knob really quick, and then we're going to call it good.